Sometimes you got to run before you know how to walk. I saw this dialogue in the movie Iron Man about 10 years ago. And I remember this movie dialogue as I heard this dialogue 5 minutes ago. It's so fresh in my mind. And then I read the Google terms and conditions yesterday and I forgot most of it. I do not remember a single word from it. You may be able to correlate this with the instances from your life. It may be a long vacation or your birthday party, or it could be a trauma. You still remember those moments from your life. Maybe it happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You still remember that information. But when it comes to everyday studying, everyday reading, you tend to forget most of the information that you heard in the class or you read in the book yesterday or today. You tend to forget those informations. Why that happens? Well, I'll tell you. When we combine emotion with the information, boom, it goes to our long-term memory directly. This is how active learning works. Active learning improves your state of emotions, and then you are able to remember about 85% of the information. And then when you're a passive learner, you're not combining the emotion and the information. In fact, there is no emotion when you're a passive learner, and that's the reason you forget about 75% to 85% of the information in about 6 to 7 days. We all know that we have short-term memory and we have long-term memory. If you consider brain as a computer, then you can consider the short-term memory is the temporary storage of that computer. The short-term memory is a two-way door. You hear the information, you listen the information, and then it's the brain's functionality to remove those useless information from the brain and keep the information that is going to be useful in future. So if you categorize that information that is going to be useful in future, those information brain tends to keep. And if you revisit those information, it then goes to the long-term memory, and long-term memory is the one-way door. Whatever information goes to your long-term memory stays there forever. When it comes to everyday learning in your college, in your school, in your institution, if you do not categorize those information, like whatever you read, whatever you heard, if you do not categorize that information, if you do not keep those information in the special category of the brain's functionality is to delete those useless information. Let me explain it to you this way. For example, you read a lot of things every day. You read your text messages, you read menu in the restaurant, you read articles on Google, you read newspaper, you read course books. So what is the difference for the brain? So when you're an active learner, you put that information that you read in your class, that you heard from your tutor, you categorize that information in a special category, and then the brain doesn't delete that information. It keeps it for a long time. And when you revisit those information, it goes to your long-term memory. Same goes for listening. You listen a lot of things in everyday life, right? You listen to children playing, you listen to your parents, you talk to your friends on phone, you listen to your friends. So what is the difference for the brain? How does the brain categorize that this information is important, that you in your class, if you're listening to your tutor, how will the brain categorize that this information that you're listening from the tutor is useful? How will the brain categorize? You can categorize this by being an active learner, and then you tend to remember it for a long time. So when you become an active learner in your class, in your school, in your institution, or in your college, whatever you hear, whatever you read, you put that information in a special category of the brain, and then you remember most of the information after a few days. And if you're a passive learner, on the other hand, when you're not combining the information with the emotion, then you're most likely to forget about 75% information. So friends, this is really important for being an active learner, to supply the right quality materials to the learning of your castles, to collect the best quality materials, to supply all possible materials required for the building of the castle of your learning. You need to be active learner. And friends, Our education system doesn't teach these skills, doesn't teach the importance of being active learner, of being active listener, or of being active reader. They do not teach us in school. They do not teach us the importance of these things in our schools or colleges. So if you have to stay ahead of the race, if you have to improve yourself, if you have to become the best version of yourself, you have to take actions today. You have to learn how to learn. You have to pay attention to these things. So going forward, I'm going to make video on what are the techniques of being an active listener, because all these things, active listening, active reading, participation or group discussions, or active note-taking, all these are active learning skills. I'm going to start from active listening. So in my next video, I'll be covering the techniques of being an active listener. I'm going to show you the WAR technique of listening, the WAR technique of listening. So if you're new here, consider subscribing because a lot of edutainment is going on here. I hope you have a great day and keep learning.